Let's start right now with this word from President Gerald Ford.
My fellow Americans, our long national nightmare is over. Our Constitution works. Our great republic is a government of laws and not of men. Here, the people rule.
Our long national nightmare is over. Except that it's not. And except that it wasn't. And our reliance, our collective national exhale as a country, our feeling that, oh, good, now everything is over because Nixon has resigned. And then Nixon had been pardoned. And therefore, there was nothing else to be scared of. But let's think about what happened in 1973, 1974, and shortly thereafter. Bartlett became the editorial page editor of the Wall Street Journal. Ended up turning that paper in a direction that ended up with him earning the distinction as the most influential editorial page editor of his time. Phyllis Schlafly blocked passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. Conservative Political Action Committee, you might have heard of that, CPAC. It has the conferences every year. It was founded. The Heritage Foundation was founded. National Right to Life, founded 1974. Focus on the Family, founded 1977. 1978 was Proposition 13 and the modern anti-tax, anti-public services movement. The end of the Nixon administration was not the end of the conservative movement. The end of the Nixon administration was not a dawn of greater transparency. It was not a dawn of addressing climate change. It was not a flourishing of democracy. It was not an emboldening of the people who've been fighting for civil rights and for voting rights. It was not a flourishing going forward of the middle class. In fact, starting in 1980 was when the burgeoning middle class, which had been growing since World War II, started to shrink. Our long national nightmare was not over then. It is not over now. It wouldn't have been over even if Bill Barr had issued a different report, even if what amounts to what Bill Safire called the cover-up general, if he had done something very differently. It wouldn't have been over. And it's not over now. So how do we react to that? Well, I've been saying personally that we shouldn't be putting all of our faith in existing institutions. We have to transform institutions. We have to build new institutions. We have to work at grassroots. We have to work at local level. We have to not neglect presidential politics or congressional politics. We have to not neglect what's happening in large existing institutions and how those can be used in pro-democracy fashion. We got to do those things. But we have to not think that the machine of power right now is moving in the direction of the people's interest. We can't just assume that. We have to move it. We have to build new gears and make sure that the gears of government are in fact working in the direction of the people's interest. Yesterday, we used the word zugzwang. It is a chess term when you force your opponent into a move they don't want to make. And I used some examples of zugzwang. Here's another one. The move by the right wing to say government is bad, leading people to say, well, therefore we must say government is good. Taxes are bad as well, therefore taxes are good. No. Government and taxes are necessary. It is our job to make them better rather than worse. It is our job to make government better rather than worse. Government's a tool. Public services are a tool. How do we make sure those tools are used to the benefit of people rather than subjugation of people? And if we can avoid a simplistic, binary understanding of what's happening in the country, if we can think about first principle, if we can think about what is most important, how do we make people's lives a little bit better rather than a lot worse, then we can stay focused. If we can recognize that there's not a single president that will save us, there's not a single Congress that will save us, but that we are those we have been waiting for? That we have to build communities and build movements and build new ownership structures and build new institutions and build new organizations and build new media? That we have to support the good stuff that exists? We have to try to transform the mediocre or bad stuff that exists? We have to get rid of the really bad stuff that exists if we possibly can? We have to think of ourselves as agents, as people who have agency, as workers, as participants, not as viewers merely, not as listeners merely, not as audience merely, not as a target demographic merely. And we have to be vigilant. Stockdale paradox. A couple people said, thank you for that. Somebody said, oh, remind me what that is. Very quick version, Admiral John Stockdale, American hero, before he was vice presidential candidate to Ross Perot, before Saturday Night Live made fun of him, and described the people who made it out of the Hanoi Hilton, people who made it out of prison camps. And they were the people who were neither too optimistic nor too pessimistic, or more accurately, the people who didn't just assume everything was fine, but also the people who did not assume they were doomed. They were the people who were brutally honest about the critical facts facing the situation and ultimately confident that they had to work to be successful eventually. We need to embrace that Stockdale paradox if we're going to get out of this prison camp. And we've got to celebrate the good stuff. Today is Thursday. What's good? Earlier this week, said on Thursday, we would take your calls on good stuff that's happening out there, on ways that people can be involved. I made a list of 10. I'll be sharing my 10 today of things that you can do if we are agents, if we are workers, if we are participants, if we are not merely viewers, if we are not merely a target market. If we are human beings who are in this together, what can we do? What can you do? What are you doing that you want to thank you for, that you deserve a thank you for, or something you saw somebody else do? What are little bills that are happening in your legislature that could be big bills? What's something happening in Congress you want to praise? What's something you're doing in your community or somebody else is doing in your community that could actually do something that's a wish that could beget more wishes, that actually could do something to impact the power structure? To make it more pro-democracy, make it a little bit better rather than a lot worse. Because we are not merely dreaming. And that when this stuff that we don't trust happens and we want to go to sleep, I can understand it. That is how totalitarian regimes have been successful in the past. If we are going to make sure that we don't have an arc of history that bends towards a totalitarian regime, regardless of our politics in terms of many issues, including our religion, we have to make sure we don't go to sleep, that we aren't dreamers. So what's the good news? What's good out there? It's Thank You Thursday. What do you want to say thank you for? What are you engaging in? What are other people engaging in that you want to give a shout out to? Or what's an idea you have that someone could pile on to that help out, that could actually win, that could actually have some impact, that could be related to the big, big values, the big, big important stuff, even if it's working at a hyper-local level? What are the little things we can do that are about the bigger things?